Our regular Board of Education meeting for North Kansas City Schools. It's April 28th, 2020. And due to the guidelines from the CDC, our board members are now all present, but be participating through video conferencing. This meeting will be streamed live on the district's YouTube channels, and any direct link to this, the district's platforms will access this meeting. Community and staff members are encouraged to view the meeting from their homes. However, if the public is unable to access it via live stream, you are welcome to go to the boardroom at Doolan Center, and a video live stream will be available at that time. Recording of this meeting will be available on the district website to watch at any time following the meeting. So welcome and joining us. We did have an executive session earlier. I'll call this meeting to order, and I would invite you all to join us in the Pledge of Allegiance given by Dr. Becky Cronky from Gateway. And I invite those participating to please mute your screen as she gives us the pledge, and please stand. Thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I appreciate her joining us by video. We did complete roll call in our executive session, and all 7 board members are present. And at this point in our agenda, we would move to visitor comments, and I'll invite Dr. Daniels to present 2 comments that we have received from the community.
Good evening. The first one is from Corey Hall, a parent. It was received on April 7th. She says, I'm a mother of a Staley senior. I hope that instead of canceling graduation, you will postpone it. The seniors deserve this. Thank you. And then our second public comment was from Kathleen Mahan. She's an employee, and it was received April 10th. She says, what do you think about a drive-by graduation? Seniors and their families would drive by a chosen destination that has cameras streaming live. The grads step out for some pics, receive their diploma cover and or diploma folder, and then drive off. Kind of like the food hands off that we're doing right now. Those were the 2 comments.
Thank you very much. And we will be addressing graduation a little bit later in this meeting, so those are very apropos questions, and follow up with the individuals as well if they have further questions. I do invite any member of the community, however, to join us on our Let's Talk feature on our website if they have any additional questions, or if there are things that you want to address with the board at future meetings. We would be happy to hear from you. At this point, we will move to approve the agenda. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
I second that.
Second.
It's been moved by Mr. Stone, seconded by Mr. Harrell. Roll call, please.
Ms. Youngers?
Consent agenda.
So moved.
I'm sorry, that was Ms. Youngers that moved, and the second was?
Dr. Ward.
Okay. The consent agenda is before you. There are 24 items, which include personnel and appointments. The treasurer's report has been also removed to separate consideration. Any discussion or comments regarding any of the items on the consent agenda? Hearing none, may we roll call, Madam Secretary?
Ms. Youngers,
Yes.
Ms. Wardick,
Yes.
Ms. Reinhardt,
Yes.
Mr. Stone,
Yes.
Mr. Harrell,
Yes.
Dr. Ward,
Yes.
Ms. Kauk.
Yes, the consent agenda has been approved as presented unanimously. Under number 4, there are 2 items for separate consideration. The first of those is the treasurer's report. Do I have a motion for consideration?
I move approval of the treasurer's report, which I will give in a moment.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Ward, is there a second?
Second.
And by Mr. Stone. And yes, Dr. Ward, if you would please share your comments. Thank you.
The treasurer's report, the financial statements for the district were distributed earlier. I won't go through all of the details. The biggest highlights are, to date, we're doing just fine, but to date ends March 31. And after March 31, all kinds of chaos reigns supreme. April 15th was not a point at which everybody tendered their taxes if they had a net due. It wasn't done, and so it will be coming later in June and July. We have all of the stuff with everybody staying at home and all of the schools basically closed. We have different staffing situations. So at that point, all chaos kind of breaks loose. However, at this point, Mr. Fritz and I have talked, and it's our belief that we will finish this year with the fund balance at least as good as the budget. It might be improved, but at least as good as the budget. The uncertainty really shows up in next year. And before we have to approve a budget, we will have gotten for next year, we will have gotten through the end of the legislative session, which is question mark number 1. We will have gotten through the closing of schools or reopening or whatever. In other words, the summer school plan ought to be clear, and the plan for full engagement in the fall ought to be more clear. And so all of those things emerging, and hopefully there will be some better feel for collections of state income taxes, which will not affect this year, but will affect revenue, state revenue, and their ability to pay the foundation formula for next year. So like I said, if you go up to March 31, life is good and normal. And if you peak beyond that, it gets less normal, but we are in good shape. Our fiscal management has been solid, and it puts us in a good place for this fiscal year. Matt, Mr. Fritz, is there anything I missed, or does that cover it?
I think that covers it, Dr. Ward. I think, as you said, we are status quo through the end of March, and even with the state payment from April, which we have received to date but is not included in this treasurer's report, we are on target. However, just recently there has been reductions or withholdings from the governor's office on this year's state budget to the tune of $15 million in the formula and $7 million in transportation, which is about a 2% cut for the remaining of this year in those items. We'll see how that comes through, but as of right now, even through April, we've received our full payment from the state.
Matt and I would be glad to entertain any questions from the board.
Hearing none? Thank you for the report. This will be continued to get more interesting as time goes on. So I appreciate it. So we have a motion and a second on the table for approval of the treasurer's report as presented. Roll call, please.
Ms. Youngers,
Abstain?
Ms. Wardick,
Yes.
Ms. Reinhardt,
Yes.
Mr. Stone,
Yes.
Mr. Harrell,
Yes.
Dr. Ward,
Yes.
Ms. Calc.
Yes, thank you. The second item is under personnel resignations, retirements and leaves appointments, and that's 4.02. Do I have a motion for approval of the appointment as presented?
So moved?
That's Ms.
And
Youngers.
second.
And second by Mr. Harrell. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Ms. Youngers,
Yes.
Ms. Wardick,
Abstain?
Ms. Reinhardt,
Yes.
Mr. Stone,
Yes.
Mr. Harrell,
Yes.
Dr. Ward,
Yes.
Ms. Calc.
Yes. Motion carried. Thank you very much. I will make one announcement that I missed earlier as we began. There is an election on June 2nd, and we have 4 candidates for a school board position, of which there are 2 openings. We have 2 incumbents, Mr. Terry Stone and Ms. Dixie Youngers, who have placed their names on the ballot in that order, and also Ms. Anessa DeLong and Ms. Carrie Gleason, who have also presented their names for consideration. The Missouri statute does provide for the election of officers and elected officers to serve in their positions until their successors are duly elected. So I might make mention of that. Again, that election is on June 2nd, and I do understand from Clay County Election Board that there are absentee ballots available should individuals be uncomfortable voting in person during the COVID restrictions. At this point, then, we will go on to new business, and there are salary schedules for consideration. And that'd be, who would like to present those tonight?
I believe Dr. Gaddy is going to.
Dr. Gaddy, thank you.
Thank you. I'm actually going to turn it over to Mr. Fritz, who's going to talk about salary negotiations, and then I'll tag in on the backside.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Jenny. And thank you, Madam President and Board of Education, for the opportunity to present to you the fiscal year 21 salary schedules. Before I begin, I would like to thank all of the members of CTTN for their hard work, insight, and support throughout this process. I would also like to provide some background on why the schedules are being presented tonight
From above the screen.
and how the schedules were developed. As you're aware, our last several board meetings have included financial updates that, quite frankly, lack significant reliable information that we typically use this time of year to prepare the school budget. While we continue to monitor the impact of COVID-19 pandemic on our current and future budgets, there remains significant uncertainty to this day, uncertainty that we recognize will last for some time. However, we are determined to be champions for our kids, our staff, and our community. In order to do so, we must remain steadfast in our commitment to produce a balanced budget for this new fiscal year before it begins in July. Presenting these schedules this evening is a huge step in accomplishing that goal, but by no means is it the final answer. We will continue to work with CTTN to determine options for adjusting pay as we move forward and through the pandemic. Through our collaborative team for teacher negotiations, we have been working on the salary schedule since late last year. We worked our normal process to come to an agreement on what a new schedule for fiscal year 21 would look like. We discussed revenue projections, increased students and teachers. We looked over numerous schedules with varying price tags attached. We had great input and teamwork, and we had a plan. And then we went on spring break with plans to come to a final agreement on what it would be what would be a new schedule that teachers, the board, and everyone could be proud of. Unfortunately, even the best laid plans don't always play out as we may expect. After spring break, we continued discussions as a team, and we are here tonight with our new best plan. We agreed that we needed to move forward and that we needed to provide certainty to our staff, students, and community that we have a plan that includes all of them. We agreed that we would keep our current schedule, but that we would continue to provide step and lane movement for our teachers. In providing step and lane movement for teachers, some teachers will see up to a 7% increase depending on where on the schedule they are and where they will be moving to. All teachers have the opportunity to earn both step and lane, except for those at the very end and far right of the salary schedule. The current schedule provides for an average increase of 4.65% for teachers moving diagonally, that's both step and lane, and provides for an average increase of 2.5% for teachers moving down the schedule or just step only. CTTN recognizes the challenges associated with the pandemic and has worked hard to ensure that the district maintains its financial stability while keeping teachers employed and compensated fairly in the light of financial uncertainties. With this plan, I estimate the fiscal impact of the recommendation will increase teacher salary and benefit expenditures by approximately $1.9 million. Additionally, I worked with district leaders to keep the current classified salary schedule and allow step movement along the schedule to achieve an average increase of 2% for classified staff. The estimated fiscal impact of this recommendation will increase classified salary and benefit expenditures by approximately $900,000. With that, I would like to pass it on to Jenny, and she'll tell you about the contract process.
Thank you, Mr. Fritz. Again, with the approval of the salary schedules this evening, tomorrow Human Resources is prepared to send out contracts and salary notifications to all of our employees so that we can continue to move forward and let our employees feel secure with their future. We turn that back over to you, Madam President, for any questions at this time.
Sorry. Are there questions for Mr. Fritz or Dr. Gaddy from the board?
I have one.
Yes, Mr.
Madam President, or actually in this case it will be Mr. Fritz. The budget impact numbers you gave do not consider the savings for people leaving. Is that right? In other words, if we hired somebody in at step 1 and we had somebody at step 28, the impact would be reduced.
That is correct. We do not have our current, within those total numbers I gave you, the attrition numbers are not included in there.
So what you reported would be the maximum exposure for the district of about 2.8 million, but that would be, it's unlikely that the real impact would be that.
Yes, sir, that is correct.
Thank you.
Other comments or questions?
Madam President, if I could, I'd just like to thank Matt and Jenny for all their work putting this together. I'd also like to thank CTTN for their understanding of this particular situation. Peggy, can you mute for just a second? Thank you. And to make this happen, I think is a pretty good deal. What I would just say is that we have tried to find the savings in the current budget to help offset this during the closure. And I think that that's important to say at this point.
I think we could hear most of what you said, but I too want to echo and appreciate CTTN's understanding, and the fact that we've been in collaborative process this year, I think has been particularly beneficial under the circumstances, and that they would go back to the table and be flexible for dialogue. I truly appreciate everyone's flexibility for that, as it's going to continue to be. It's very reassuring we can do this for our teachers this year. It's going to continue to be a moving target going forward, so I Appreciate that. Anyone else?
If I could just add one more comment that I failed to mention earlier. As Dr. Ward mentioned, the uncertainties become clearer as we move through this pandemic. You'll find out more information once we hear the state legislature's final budget numbers and those types of things. And one of the things that I mentioned in there, and I just want to make sure that we're all clear, is that we are continuing to work with CTTN on ways to enhance this should we find out at a later point in time that revenues will become stronger. A lot of the predictions out there right now are that this is going to be a U-shaped curve, meaning we went down, we're going to kind of slowly creep across the bottom for a little bit, and then we'll go back up. So I think with that in mind, we want to keep that dialogue open to potentially at some point in the future bring before the board an additional way to enhance the schedules that we put before you tonight. So, and that's one of the reasons I said this isn't a final answer for us. I think we always want to do what's in the best interest of the district and the teachers and staff. And so I think at this point, what this really gives us is a great starting point so that we can provide a budget to you that's reasonable for moving forward into next year, regardless of the impact. And then as we learn more and more, we'll be able to really develop it into a best possible outcomes.
All right. We are going to be approving 4 different schedules tonight. Would you like to take those separately then based after each presentation, or would you like to do all the presentations and then vote on them? Any preference, Mr. Fritz, or?
I believe we can pass them all at once. No? Peggy's shaking her
No,
head
they're
no.
4 separate, I believe.
Yeah, we'll do 4 separate ones.
Okay, all right.
And what I covered was the classified and the teachers. Additionally, I think when you mentioned the 4 separate, there is also a supplemental, which is consistent with prior years. It has not been updated other than to show the different items that we have. We haven't removed anything or added anything significant to the supplemental. And with the administrators, it's not really a schedule. It's an increase of 2%, similar to what we did with the classified staff.
Okay. So again, any other questions regarding the classified schedule, first of all?
Well, I might go back to, if I could, for the teachers for just a second.
Yes.
Before the classified. Again, I appreciate your work very much. I'm glad that we were able to go through part of the process, but there still is potentially room on the table to continue our discussions. But more than anything, it appears to me like this does offer some stability to our staff, and the fact that once the board approves these salary schedules tonight, the district will be able to issue employment contracts to our teaching staff very soon, which hopefully will give them peace of mind that, again, that their job is secure for the next school year, and their rate of pay has been determined at this point in time. Obviously, if there's adjustments made at a later date, we can have those discussions later, but nevertheless, it will give some stability to the employees to know that they have an employment contract for next year. And it also will enable Mr. Fritz to prepare the preliminary and then ultimately the final budget for the Board of Education. So thank you.
Okay. All right. Any other comments or questions? Okay. Hearing none, we will start with the approval of the 2021 classified salary schedule as presented. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Ms. Youngers? And a second?
Second.
Mr. Harrell, seconded. Roll call, please.
Ms. Youngers,
Yes.
Ms. Wardick,
Yes.
Ms. Reinhardt,
Yes.
Mr. Stone,
Yes.
Mr. Harrell,
Yes.
Dr. Ward,
Yes.
Ms. Calc.
Yes. So motion for the 2021 classified salary schedule has been approved as presented. Now, motion please for the teacher salary schedules as presented.
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Youngers. Is there a second?
Second.
And second by Mr. Harrell. Roll call, please.
Ms. Youngers,
Yes.
Ms. Wardick,
Yes.
Ms. Reinhardt,
Yes.
Mr. Stone,
Yes.
Mr. Harrell,
Yes.
Dr. Ward,
Yes.
Ms. Calc.
Yes. We have approved the 2021 teacher salary schedules as presented. Now we'll move to approval of the supplemental pay salary schedule. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Ms. Youngers? Second?
Second.
Mr. Harrell seconded the motion for approval of the 2021 supplemental pay salary schedule. Roll call, please.
Ms. Youngers,
Yes.
Ms. Wardick,
Yes.
Ms. Reinhardt,
Yes.
Mr. Stone,
Yes.
Mr. Harrell,
Yes.
Dr. Ward,
Yes.
Ms. Calc.
Yes. And lastly, we have the list of certified and non-certified administrative rehires and salaries as presented for the 2021 year. Entertain a motion.
So moved.
Ms. Youngers, and a second, please.
Second.
And a second by Mr. Harrell. And roll call. Peggy, please.
Ms. Youngers,
Yes.
Ms. Wardick,
Yes.
Ms. Reinhardt,
Yes.
Mr. Stone,
Yes.
Mr. Harrell,
Yes.
Dr. Ward,
Yes.
Ms. Calc.
Yes. Thank you. We have approved the list of certified and non-certified administrative rehires and salaries. Thank you, staff, for all of your very hard work in presenting this to us in such a nice, organized fashion and so transparent. And then also to CTTN and all of those involved in the negotiations and discussion of this. I appreciate it. And Dr. Gaddy, your life gets busier tomorrow.
Yes, ma'am.
All righty. Our next item of business is to go to the board and superintendent reports and discussion. And Dr. Clemens, would you like to introduce the first topic, summer school?
Yes, absolutely. Things are a little bit crazy right now in terms of trying to schedule summer school for our kids. We know that we have lots of students that take advantage of summer school each and every year. So what we thought we'd do is start off by doing the extended calendar sites and then move into summer school and kind of share what we know now, knowing that we'll probably have to update the board pretty regularly through the Friday updates and other opportunities in which we have. I think, Dr. Sutton, you ready to go with some of this extended calendar? I know you were having some problems with your video. Are you there?
I am back on. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I am back on, and you can see me. I'm glad that that my video worked. I did my hair tonight and everything. So
We appreciate that.
I knew everybody would. But as you can imagine, COVID-19 is certainly requiring us to think very differently about all of our academic programming this summer, and in particular, our extended calendar sites. And so throughout the past few weeks, Kristen Havens has been working with both principals, and we have been collecting feedback from both staffs to put together an alternative learning plan that we believe will best meet the needs of the students in the community. And so I've invited Kristen here tonight to talk a little bit about some of our thoughts. Like Dr. Clemens said, we do still have some work to do, some feedback to collect, and additional guidance from health departments. We'll certainly take account into all of this as we plan for this summer. And Kristen, I'll turn it over to you to share some of the highlights about our thinking and where we're at right now.
Sure, thank you. I'm glad to be here tonight and talk with you about the planning that I have been working on with our administrators at Crestview and at Wynwood. And of course, our number one choice would be the summer to be in our buildings face-to-face with our students and run the summer at the extended year program that we're so good at running. So while we wish that were the case, we know that we have to be prepared for any number of scenarios that may come our way. And so 2 things that our team has really been thinking about is, number one, we need and deserve, our students deserve for us to continue their education for 33 days this summer. That's what we have committed to, and we definitely want to stick with that commitment. We also want to think about the highest engagement possible for students this summer. We're coming off of 9 weeks of virtual school, and so what can we do to make sure that our students are highly engaged and participate in our extended year opportunity? And so in working with our administrators, and then of course watching our guidance from Clay County and Kansas City, Missouri, we are right now anticipating that we would be in a virtual situation for the month of June. And so tonight I just want to share with you some ideas that we have, again, strategies that we're working through, thinking about the highest engagement possible of our students. And so one of the things that we are thinking through, we originally had planned to start our extended year calendar on June 10th, which would give our students about 2.5 weeks off as we end on May 22nd. And so we've been having conversations about the balance between too much time off and not enough time off. So when we're thinking about what virtual school for our extended calendar schools would look like in June, we would like to be able to push that calendar up 1 week and go ahead and start with our students on June 3rd rather than June 10th. And there are a couple of reasons for that. We feel like giving our students a 1.5 weeks off of virtual learning would be a nice break for them, but we don't want to give them so much time off that getting them back onto virtual learning might be difficult. We also think that there may still be strict rules in our community about gathering, and so if our students aren't able to be out and about, we would much rather be educating them and be working with them behind our screens. And so June 3rd is a date that we are thinking right now that we would like to propose for a virtual start for the extended year calendars. Another thing that we're thinking about is the students with which we serve. Relationships are one of the most important things we have going for us in a virtual setting. And so if we're thinking about how we can continue to have the highest engagement possible of our students, we're thinking about what that would look like in June. And our best strategy right now for that high level of engagement is to keep students with the teacher. So typically in June in our extended year calendars, we would roll students up to the next grade level. And our best thinking right now is to keep students in their same grade level with a known factor, which is their teacher. So this would be different. This would mean we would not be bringing kindergartners in June, which we do not feel like bringing kindergartners in a virtual environment is setting our students up or our teachers up for success. We would really like to hold off bringing them in until we could see them virtually, which hopefully would be in July. If we could see them virtually in July, that could very well be an option for us. But in June, in a virtual environment, we would like to just have our kindergartners stay in kindergarten, which would also mean that we would keep our 5th graders. Typically, we would release them and we would have a program for them at Eastgate. Is what we've done in the past. That we've had for a couple of weeks, but we would like to hold on to them in June. Again, we feel like the sense of familiarity and routine with their teacher would bring us high engagement. We also feel like families would be familiar with the teacher, and if they're needing help, they're more familiar with that teacher and could reach out for assistance if needed. We also feel like additional time to work on essential standards for the next grade level would be really important to us after coming off of 9 weeks of virtual learning. So while we are confident that students are still learning, just having that additional time to be able to shore up some of those standards, we think would be awesome. But we also know we would have to bring novelty to their experience too, to keep them engaged. So we know we have some curriculum work ahead of us. We're also concerned about the amount of support that our students would have at home. So if we did roll them up a grade level, there's a lot of uncertainty about that. There are a lot of newness about that in a time that's pretty uncertain from day to day. And so again, having them with a familiar teacher in a home where we may or may not have support. You know, right now we have the stay-at-home order, and so typically there's going to be an adult around that is there to help students. But as that stay-at-home order is lifted, but we wouldn't be able to still have face-to-face school, we might have families that are in situations where they're working, a child's in daycare, and now they're in daycare and trying to do virtual school. And so those are just some pieces that we've thought through of why we think it would be important to keep our students in June with the teacher that they're most familiar with. We would still propose that we continue on in the virtual environment with the 4 days of lessons, and then the 1 day for students to catch up on any lessons that they were not able to get to. And our teachers would have that day to collaborate and plan with their colleagues as well. And like Dr. Clemens and Dr. Sutton both mentioned, we're still in the process of gathering feedback. We have a survey out right now to all of our teachers at Crestview and Wynwood and gathering their input. And we plan to do that with families as well as we make some final decisions going into the next couple of weeks. So, Madam President, at this time, I would turn it over to you for any questions.
Certainly. And I turn that over to the various board members. Are there questions for Ms. Havens?
I don't have any question, but I have comments. I applaud your efforts in a very thoughtful plan. I think relationship piece is something that we need to be very cognizant of, especially during the shelter at home time when isolation seems to be wearing and tearing on families. And so I'm totally supportive, and I think you're on target in keeping these students with the familiar teacher. I think that is going to help the learning to continue through the summer until we get to somewhat of a more blended type environment. But that relationship piece is so important, and I applaud you in your thoughtfulness of this plan. It's very thorough. Thank you.
Are there others? Questions or comments?
I agree with my colleague, and especially for Crestview and Wynwood in the sense of the online learning, especially at elementary level. I don't think that can compete with being in a room with a classroom teacher. And so I'm going to assume academically, and it's a mixed bag, but a number of our kids are not getting the same kind of academic learning they would be getting if we were in normal mode. So I think the summer will give us a chance to kind of do a little catch up and reinforce what we've missed some. So I agree completely that it was a really good decision made and a good strategy.
Others?
I might just make a few comments. Again, we're certainly in interesting times, and I really like your comments, so again, that we're all working to really get the highest engagement possible. I know this has been a very tough time for our students, our teachers, and families as we go forward. More than anything else, I think this gives these two buildings an opportunity to kind of maybe catch up on some of the curriculum that they have missed. I guess just some of my comments and questions. Again, I am very supportive of the plan, but just realizing that we're kind of looking for a blend in the fact that in many aspects, we set these buildings up to kind of have a jump start on their next school grade coming up rather than be a remediation program. So I think we just might ask ourselves how we would blend this over a 2-year period of time rather than just this one particular summer, meaning that we'll say, for example, a third grader who's currently enrolled in third grade, going to get an extra 33 days of third grade instruction this summer. And then when they come back to the fourth grade in August, will that fourth grade follow the traditional 177 days again? So it's just maybe look at it over a 2-year period also and see if there's any type of blended approach that can go forward.
Others?
I guess, Madam President.
Certainly.
Dr.
Ward.
I think right now relationships are king. I totally agree with my colleagues. I do hope that, I guess I would hope that we would be able to return to our philosophical foundations by next June and do the rate, have the students go ahead and matriculate and get started on their new learning. And so this would be a year where really the students in the extended calendar schools will have to meet their learning objectives on the same calendar that those not in the learning in the extended calendar is what my assumption would be. Since we think we can do all students in 177 days, it'll just kind of revert for this year. But I hope we can get back to our philosophical foundation after this coming school year.
We sure hope we can. Yes. And I think we just have to be agile as we're thinking through June and July. While we feel like we have a very solid plan for June, we have lots of scenarios that we're working through for July. And to your point too, Mr. Harrell, that's something when we think of a 2-year plan, is it something that we can really remediate in a way or hit the essentials for these 3 weeks in June? And then what does that look like in July? Do we start hitting that next grade levels content in July, and hopefully we'll be in a face-to-face situation then. There's just lots of opportunity to think through that as well. But again, I just think we have to just again be agile in our thinking and know that based on the recommendations that we're getting from Kansas City and from Clay County, we've got a plan that we can then move forward with.
I would just like to add, I totally support what you've presented, and I think it is just kind of a micro of how we're going to be looking at all of the other classrooms in the district, even though this affords us a really wonderful opportunity to work especially with these schools, that the relationship and transitions, that the discussions you're having around those are really thoughtful, and I know that they will also help translate and inform you forward as we think about transitions throughout the district. So thank you very much. I really appreciate it. Is there anything on this topic more that you need from the board at this point, other than our thumbs up?
Madam President,
Yes.
I do believe that we will need the board to approve a calendar at the next board meeting. I think we're waiting just a little bit longer to see what other adjustments could possibly be made, but we wanted to present the plan to you now so that you could kind of get your arms around it before asking for approval of a calendar at the next board meeting.
And we should possibly expect at this point that it would be June 3rd then. Yes?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Very good. Thank you. All right.
However, even though we're waiting on the calendar to be approved, would you go ahead and communicate this to these school communities as soon as tomorrow, obviously?
With the teachers, we have just been talking through scenarios. So we haven't landed on any one just yet until that approval comes through. But they know that is one thought, is a June 3rd. And we got their feedback on that calendar date as far as staffing goes.
Okay. And again, I'm thinking of maybe the 5th graders too, who might think that they were going to be completing the 5th grade at the end of May. that in this scenario that they would have further work to do this summer.
Mhm.
I would think we'd want to communicate that as soon as possible.
Yeah, I would.
Go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. I would agree. I think the sooner we can at least communicate the scenarios, I think that could be very helpful to our families. Yep.
Well, and I think we have to talk to them about what an opportunity this is this summer, and so that they don't feel like, oh, I don't get to. And I think there are ways that we can do that. There are ways that we can make it fun for them, and they'll be learning and not even realize it. That's our hope, right?
Very good. All right. I think that's a nice segue into the discussion around summer school.
Yes, I think Perry's going to lead us through a little summer school discussion and share with what's going to happen. Hopefully, what we know right now will happen this summer.
Well, first of all, thank you very much to you, Madam President, and the board for letting me talk to you about summer school today. We've constructed a couple of plans for June and a couple of plans for July. As I laid out in the board memo, all plans allow for distance learning for 4 weeks in each month. The big difference between Plan A and Plan B in each month is that one set of plans assumes that we will have face-to-face contact with our kids in our buildings, and the other one assumes that we will not. That's still being up in the air. We'll be listening closely to our community leaders for direction, and hope we will be able to make a decision for June, maybe as early as the end of this week, but certainly no later than May 8th, so that we have 3 weeks of turnaround time. And then for July, we'll need to make a commitment one way or the other by June 12th to again allow us that time for our bus drivers to get their routes down and all of our plans to be in place. And with that, I would like to turn it back to you, Madam President, for any questions from you and the board.
All right. There was a nice presentation in your packets. Are there questions for Dr. Helvitz? I hear none. It's interesting to me, although we are very well organized and planning very strongly, we still have to kind of be very, very flexible up to the minute. And so I appreciate the fact that a lot of communications came to us this week from a number of officials around timing and things to be thoughtful that we know you are all going through the very thoughtful process and being safe and secure with our kids to the best of our ability under the circumstances. So I appreciate that. Any other comments? All righty. Hearing none, we'll move on to 6.03 graduation. Dr. Clemens.
Yes, Madam President, this is an interesting topic that we are working and spending a lot of time with right now, as we want to provide the best experience for our high school seniors possible in this unfortunate time, and yet be as flexible as possible with the information that we are being provided from our city, our county, and our state. I think I'd like to start like I did last time and just kind of go through a short timeline and then turn it over to Rochelle to talk about the current practices that are going on as we prepare. This started in early April when our principals and staff members started reaching out to kids and parents, asking them what they would like for graduation, as we started to see at that point a traditional graduation was going to be very difficult to have. Of course, the feedback in which we received is that most parents and students wanted that traditional graduation. So we started engaging particularly Clay County Health Department and trying to understand where they believe we would be in June, July, and in early August before kids leave us to go to college or career or military, where they thought we would be in the social distancing part of COVID-19. We were getting information that a traditional graduation just wasn't going to be able to happen. Typically, our graduations are somewhere between 5,000 to 7,000 people. So we started a dialogue about how could we have 2, 3, 4 graduations, when Clay County essentially said, if you're thinking about July, you need to think about 100, crowds of around 100. Well, that captured us around April 10th through the 14th, we started visiting with our principals about traditional graduations are going to be very difficult to have. How can we ensure that we honor our seniors in the very best way we can to make it memorable, but still leave an opportunity that if something happened, a vaccine or something happened, that in late July, we could still have a larger celebration. And so on the 16th, or on the 15th of April, Kansas City Metro health officials met. And so at that point, I wanted one more opportunity to visit with Clay County Health Department to see if after that meeting, there was more information that may be more flexible in terms of crowdsourcing in July. Certainly on the day after that, on the 16th of April, I contacted Clay County Health Department and their officials, and was reported that it's still looking like crowds of 100 in late July, possibly going up to 200. Knowing that some of our choirs, some of our bands are just about would take that capacity, we knew it was still going to be very difficult to do traditional graduations unless we did 5, 6, 7 different sessions. That is not what our kids wanted when we talked to them. So then we brought the principals together, our central office staff, our cabinet, and other folks, and developed what a stage of progression for graduation, which I'm very, very proud of. I know we have a lot of people working hard on it. April 17th, we made the announcement that we're moving to virtual graduation as our first stage. And then in July, having a follow-up, whatever is allowed by CDC, Clay County Health, Kansas City, in terms of regulations, we will continue to celebrate our kids throughout the entire summer. I continue on a weekly basis, check in with Clay County Health to see if there's been any change in what they believe crowds in the summer will look like. And at this point, they're staying pretty firm with that 100, maybe in August 250 guideline, which still would make it very difficult for North Kansas City to celebrate our kids in the way that we would like to. And with that being said, I just kind of wanted to capture some of our thinking and share it with you as we continue to progress and making sure that our seniors have the very best opportunity as possible. You know, in these unfortunate times, I think it's critically important we do all we can as a school district, and I think our folks are committed to that. I'd like to thank our high school principals, our staff, our communications department, our academic services department for pulling together and creating a really good plan. As I understand today at Northtown, kids were getting their caps and gowns, and there was a lot of excitement as we were seeing our kids come through our buildings for the first time in a very long time in a social distancing manner, but it was really exciting to see kids back at our school. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Chad, and then I think Chad will pass it on to Rochelle to kind of share some of the details of what we're planning for our students.
Very good. Building just off of what Dr. Clemens just talked about, 2 weeks ago at our board meeting, I shared with you that we were collecting feedback from our students and our families, and Dr. Clemens was having conversations with the Clay County Health Department to get some guidance. And based on all of that feedback, we have developed a progressive graduation for our students. And just like Dr. Clemens said, our goal in this progressive graduation is to give our seniors the very best celebrations that we possibly can, considering all of the parameters. And so that progressive graduation includes 3 different celebrations throughout the summer. First one being some celebrations on the actual graduation date, and then having a celebration virtually for each one of our high schools, and then hopefully wrapping up the summer with a senior send-off in which we can bring students back together face-to-face. But again, that's going to be dependent on so many different pieces with regards to where we're at with the health department's plans. And so that is our hope. But I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Daniels, and she's going to talk a little bit about some of the details. But just like what Dr. Clemens said, I really want to commend her team, our high school principals. They have done such an amazing job of putting this plan together in such a quick turnaround, and really, really pleased and excited to see how we're going to be able to celebrate our kids throughout the course of the summer.
Thank you so much, Chad. It's been an awful lot of fun in this uncharted territory to make things up and go with it. The high school principals and then certainly our communications team, it's just been a great time to get together and honor our seniors. So here are the components of the plan. As you heard from Dr. Clemens, we started cap and gown pickups today at Northtown, and I'm told that 65% of the students did pick up their regalia today. They were lining the drive near the field house, and it was just a wonderful environment. We'll do that with each of our other high schools this week, and then they'll have a second opportunity next week to come together. So they're 2-hour windows where they can pick all of that up. Jostens has also been tremendous in providing us great support overall. On the actual graduation days for each of our high schools, we have social media posts created with a lot of exciting videos to give year in review, look backs, and then also the opportunity to get photos taken for our graduates. They can come up to the school in their caps and gowns at that time, and they will have a processional that they'll be marched through, and we've got photographers helping us with that. At that time, they'll also be given a yard sign to take home. We wanted to involve the community in it in a certain way, and so we have yard signs that have their names and then their photos on them as well. In the evening on their actual graduation day, then the stadium lights will be turned on, and again, just a lot of celebration around it via social media too. Then, in addition, on the virtual graduation day, families can gather together and they will watch a ceremony that has a lot of the traditional pieces that you would see in a graduation. We have our choirs, bands, and orchestras doing special music, the alma mater, the national anthem. We have student speakers coming in to be recorded. We have an address from each principal. Then the presentation of the class. We'll have pictures of each student with their names being read, just like it would be at graduation. And then remarks from Mrs. Kauk and Dr. Clemens as well. We have a tassel move and a cap toss in there. So it'll be a lot of fun for families to gather together on that virtual graduation time. And then, as Chad said, the senior send-offs in July, we will continue to monitor the advice and guidance of our local health department, but we have celebrations planned at each high school with barbecues, senior breakfasts, things like they've traditionally done, and ideally having the building open for pictures so that students can go back inside and get one last photo inside there. Then students and families also will have the opportunity to come into the auditorium and walk across the stage to receive that diploma. So again, we'll monitor the guidelines that have been given to us, but we want that chance for families to come together physically to be able to celebrate in this manner. So a very comprehensive approach. We really, our heart goes out to our seniors and their families certainly, and we hope that this just shows a little bit of how much we care about them and what they've done for North Kansas City Schools. At this time, Madam President, I turn it back to you for any questions that the board may have.
I believe probably the board does have some comments or questions, and I open it up to you all.
I would like to make a comment. This is Dixie. Just to thank you for all the hard work you've done on making this a special event for all of our seniors. And if there are any seniors or parents out there listening to us today, just reiterating how we've heard you. We hear your concerns, and we want to have a special event for you. And I think what's planned is a good solution. So thank you so much for speaking up, and we do hear what you're saying.
Are there others?
I would agree totally. I mean, I've had people call me too and are very upset that there's not going to be a full-blown graduation ceremony, upset that they don't think virtual is going to take the place of what they were anticipating. And I know, and until things get cleared up, I think we're kind of between a rock and a hard spot. So this seems to be the best that can be offered, and there's nothing more that can be done at this time.
Anyone else?
I think the plans that have been developed are a very comprehensive alternative, some creative problem solving and giving the circumstances that we have to deal with. I think this is a wonderful opportunity, and I had the opportunity of watching the Air Force Academy virtual, and I particularly had a relative in that graduating class and know that there were like 15 different households throughout the United States that were watching. And doing something virtual, even though it's just their picture on the screen, is going to give out-of-town relatives the opportunity to participate that they might not have had that occasion to make it in on a weeknight to come in to Kansas City for graduation. So I think there are some pluses for all of this. And given the circumstances, I think this alternative plan is one of the best that I've seen around in the state. So kudos to all the hard work.
Yes, and I'll echo everything that was just said. More than anything, though, we certainly realize this is a difficult situation, and it's certainly not the plan that we want, but it's probably the best plan for our current situation. But I think that by releasing our plan now up front, it gives the students and their families time to prepare, again, for this virtual graduation and phased-in approach. So again, I appreciate the fact that we're getting our information out soon as possible to these students and their families so that they can plan accordingly. So thank you for putting together the plan as presented.
Others?
I add my thanks to Dr. Daniels and the administrators and all the people who helped put the plan together. I think it was a job well done.
Well, I too heard from a number of community members, and a graduation is just such a pinnacle in people's lives, and there's so much hard work that goes into the point where graduation is the celebration. So I really heard the angst and the concern, and so appreciate the feedback and thoughtfulness of the students. First of all, their input was invaluable, I know, to the district, as well as the parents' continued comments and support. It was a lot of decision making and a lot of opportunities that we have addressed, I think, in the plan, and I'm in full support of it at this point. I'm also amazed as I look at social media and all of the creativity and opportunity people are using to connect and bring some very memorable moments to their lives and to their students' lives that I will look forward to seeing how families are also pooling together and making this a really remarkable year for our students, because we do care deeply and want to celebrate them in ways. Thank you, district, though, for Dr. Daniels and your team and the principals for being so considerate of our students and working so hard to make it a day that will be quite memorable for them. Appreciate that. Anything else? Let's see if I can pull up my agenda again. The next item, I believe, is the bond expenditure update, and I believe we had some slides in our packet on that.
Yes, thanks, Madam President. I will kind of start us off here before Jeff and Matt talk to you, but I wanted to update the board that we are, even though with this situation that we're under right now with COVID-19 and a lot of the issues that we have going on with that, we are still able to continue a lot of our projects, which is invaluable right now as our timelines are tight, as you all know, from the Norclay project, which has to open up for kids, hopefully in August 1st, to the ECC, which is still online being January 1, open for that phase 1. So we were able to continue the process of getting work done, and Jeff is going to walk you through some pictures. I know they've been updated. I know he took those a week or so ago, but if you walk through actually today, there are even more work going on and even some more really incredible pictures. So by the 5/26 board meeting, we're going to really see some progress at both these sites. So with that being said, I know Matt wanted to give the update on the financial aspect of Bond 46. So Matt, go ahead, please.
All right, thank you, Chad, and thank you, Madam President. As you can see, this first slide covers our contracting with AE Dunn up to the $114.9 million mark, slightly over, as you can see on that last line there, by $34,000. I think that's pretty good considering the amount and considering all the changes and things that happened with the old North Kansas City, Old Main, I guess is what we call it, North Kansas City building. I had some issues there, and that's the main reason for some of the overruns there with JE Dunn. Moving on to the overall picture, you can see that we are about 95% complete with the initial bond from 2017. We had $123 million to spend. We've spent to date $116 million. We have encumbered, which means we have POs out there for $4.5 million, and we have about $2.3 million left remaining. So with that, I think we're in excellent shape. We're providing the funds to complete the work that we promised we would complete, and I think what you see here is different from the last time we gave an update. It's mostly expenditures incurred at Norclay and down on the Northtown South Campus, I believe is what we're calling it these days. So with that, I'll let Jeff kind of explain what actual construction is going on.
All right, thanks a lot, Matt. And as Matt indicated, we are on the home stretch of Bond 46. We have two projects left to complete that bond. One is Norclay, which we'll talk about in just a second, and the other is that work at South Campus, which is the old Methodist Church building. In tonight's consent agenda, the board approved 7 contracts, which includes the demolition of South Campus and the expansion of that parking lot. So thank you for that approval. With that, within the next week, we will get a fence up around that South Campus building, and beginning the week of May 11th, that building will begin to come down. So we'll start that process. On your screen right now are some pictures of Norclay, and as Dr. Evans mentioned earlier, these were taken last Thursday, and today it looks much different. But I just wanted to remind you what we have going on down there. We have a wrestling room, a practice room, a wrestling locker room, and a dance studio. And here on the slide right here, these are pictures of the wrestling practice room. Next week, we'll cut a hole in from the practice room into the gymnasium. And this next slide here shows, this is actually what students will see when they enter. You'll see that through the corridor, we left the corridor very similar to what it is now. Those are structural walls. We didn't want to take those down, but on the left side will be the wrestling practice room. On the right side is the wrestling locker room, and then the dance studio beyond that. On the next slide, a couple of slides, this is the Early Childhood Center. So we've started some demolition there. This place actually looks quite a bit different now as well. We had about 22, 23 guys down there tearing this place apart. So if you like to tear this stuff up, this is a huge playground right now. In this next slide, we see the one on the left. We had a lot of fixtures left behind by Price Chopper, and so we're getting those out of there now. On the right side, this was the Hobby Lobby, and you can kind of see in this picture the floor tile. They've started to get that up. Well, the floor tile is gone everywhere, and the ceilings are gone everywhere now. And that wall that was between Price Chopper and Hobby Lobby, that's been taken down, so you can see from one side to the other of that facility. And it's pretty magnificent to stand there and see just the volume of that. And just to think in about 8 or 9 months, that big playground's going to look quite a bit different, and the people playing there will be quite a bit smaller. So it's kind of fun to watch that take place. So with that, Madam President, I'll turn it back over to you for any questions that you or the board may have.
And to my colleagues. Any questions for Dr. Evans, Mr. Fritz, or Mr. Vandal?
It's just exciting to see progress at the Price Chopper Hobby Lobby. I guess we need to stop calling that. It's exciting to see the early childhood center come to fruition, even if it's by tearing down walls. That's exciting.
Others?
Jan,
Yes.
I had a chance to talk earlier with Jeff, and a disappointment, but it's one brought upon by the city of North Kansas City. We had originally talked about doing decorative fencing, the comparable to what's around Mackin Park right now. And the city code requires we put up a fence along the alley or the west side of the property, whatever you want to call it, that is more of a screening fence. And so because of that, we're not going to be able to execute the fencing plan we originally had for the property. It's a disappointment. It's where we are.
And the rationale was that backs up to some residents and for privacy and noise containment.
Yes.
There's a city ordinance where we have to screen parking when there's adjacent residential properties.
Okay. Other questions or comments? Well, it will be fun at some point to take a hard hat tour of the Early Childhood Center. I'm sure right now it's a big echo chamber and would make quite a skateboard stretch if you went from end to end. You might need roller skates just to get from one side to another, but that's very, very exciting. So be anxious to see that. Thank you for bringing the pictures forward, though. It helps keep these projects real, and we really appreciate that, and also the update on the bond. And as that's dwindling down, we're almost to our end. So thank you very much for those reports. And anything else, Dr. Evans?
No.
Okay. All right. Very good. Good report. This point, then we'll move on. In your agenda, there is board meeting calendars. That is the shortest of meeting calendars that we've seen for a long time. I imagine as things begin to change around with schedules that will begin to fill up. I know there was one question about graduation duties, and I think some of that will be available after we reorganize as a board and after we finalize our July plans. We've also discussed perhaps a summer retreat date of some sort later in the year, and there's just going to be a lot of moving parts as we go forward. So stay tuned and stay flexible. I really appreciate that, and I know the staff does too. There was also a question of the North Kansas City Board of Education is up for the governance award this year due to our participation in our activities and our great governance. There is one additional thing that we need to do to complete that distinction, and that would be to look at a video and have a conversation regarding that as a learning opportunity. The item that got the most votes amongst the board was the one on the impact of childhood trauma. and the impact on learning and behavior. So the two topics kind of merged together, and I will be working with Dr. Clemens on how to begin to address that. But that video, those videos are available to you to watch anytime. And at the point that the board convenes to discuss, hopefully you'll have an opportunity to look at one or both of those two videos. I was curious if at our next board meeting, if we met the hour before, if we would be able to discuss that and be able to checklist that off of our requirements. We will need to send in a document to MSBA that documents some of our discussion and our learnings from that. Is there any conflict with anyone's schedule if we would meet 1 hour prior to the earliest scheduled meeting at our next meeting?
So again, you're talking about May the 19th, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
I believe that all of our stuff has to be submitted by May 20th, just FYI.
20th or 22nd? Well, it does need to be submitted within a very short period. As soon as we get the meeting, we'll need to write it up and get it into them. So,
yeah,
yes, that's right. I'm finding that I'd be happy to step up for that, or maybe one of the delegates would like to do that, but it is very short order. So, would you like to meet earlier, though, given that comment, Dixie?
I'm flexible on whatever works for everybody.
Okay. All right. Well, hearing no preferences, then we probably will go ahead and schedule it for earlier that afternoon. And we are scheduled for a YouTube meeting, a virtual meeting again at that point, unless something changes. So, all right. And thank you, Dr. Clemens. If you or whoever you assign would be available to us as well, that is one of the requirements to have that be participation.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
All righty. Is there anything else for the good of the order from members tonight?
Well, again, just while we're talking about the calendar, I'm sure we're all disappointed again that the district is not going to be able to hold our retirement reception board meeting as we normally did. But nevertheless, we want to congratulate all of those employees for their years of service and dedication to our students and our community. So thank you very much. And again, hopefully we'll be able to resume those in future years.
We hope to see them back, however we can connect with them as we go forward. Absolutely. Thank you for that comment.
I have a request.
Yes.
Well, it's not a request. As y'all know, I live about 4 blocks from Oak Park, and the day after the young women who are providing meals at the curb did their video, I went by at about 12:30 or so with my homemade bandana mask and kept distance, but just observed the process they use to provide lunches and next day's breakfast for our kids and the energy and enthusiasm with which they did their work was just very impressive, and I'm sure that's reflected throughout the district, and I appreciate that kind of help and practical work. The day I was there, they're doing about 700 a day typically, and that day they were hitting 800 or 900 as I recall, so quite impressive on their part. I appreciate it.
As you mentioned that, I've had the opportunity to speak with several teachers and how appreciative they are of the adjusted schedule, having Monday to plan, and several parents have also mentioned that is really eased up. So I really applaud the district for surveying and being responsive and listening so well. I think throughout this process, that's really been so helpful in making all of the right decisions. So Dr. Clemens, you and your team, again, kudos for the planning and resiliency that you've shown in this process.
Thank you, Madam President. We'd also like to say thank you to the Board of Education for your guys' guidance and support as we continue to move forward in a quickly changing environment. And we just appreciate this that you provided our administrative team and our school district and our kids.
Well, I would remind parents and students to please continue to stay in touch with us as they see things that concern them. We'll be happy to address those, and the dialogue is very, very helpful for us. Understanding where people are at and what their needs are and what our next steps need to be. So at that, I will adjourn this meeting, and I thank you all for joining us tonight, and I hope to have a good evening, everyone. Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.